Let's get real. No contact was your first power move. But if you think silence is the end of the story, you're wrong. What comes next? That's what haunts him. This isn't about revenge. This is about rising. Because when you shift your energy, stop chasing, and finally choose you, that's when it hits him hard. You've already won by going silent. Let that sink in for a second. Choosing no contact isn't just some emotional tactic. It's a bold decision rooted in self-respect. It's the moment you stopped begging, stopped over-explaining, stopped hoping they'd finally understand your worth. You chose peace over confusion. That's not weakness. That's power, because silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It says, I refuse to participate in my own mistreatment. And when you go silent, it forces them to sit with what they lost. Not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you finally chose to heal yourself. When you're constantly reaching out, checking in, defending your feelings, what you're doing is outsourcing your value to someone who couldn't or wouldn't give it back to you. That's exhausting, and it keeps you stuck in a loop where your worth is on trial every single day. But the second you stop feeding that cycle, when you pull back your energy, that silence becomes your loudest statement. It's you saying, I'm done playing small just to stay connected. That shift, that inner transformation, it doesn't just impact you, it impacts them. It plants a seed of curiosity, of regret, of wait, what just happened? And let's be honest, going no contact is not easy. It's not just flipping a switch and suddenly forgetting someone you loved. It takes strength to sit with the urge to text and say, I'm choosing not to. It takes discipline to see a memory pop up, feel that gut punch of nostalgia, and still not break your boundary. That's real courage. That's emotional maturity. Most people never get there because they're too scared of what the silence will feel like. But you faced it. You sat in the discomfort. And what you found on the other side wasn't emptiness. It was clarity. Clarity about what you deserve, clarity about how far you've come, clarity about who you're becoming. And now you're standing at a crossroads. You've created space. Now it's time to fill it. Not with him, not with distractions, but with intention. Because the truth is, no contact is just the beginning of your comeback. The real transformation happens when you decide to stop defining yourself by what broke you. You've already taken back your voice by choosing silence. Now it's about using that quiet space to build something stronger, something they can't touch. Your confidence, your peace, your future. And the more you focus on that, the more magnetic you become, because energy doesn't lie. And when someone feels you've leveled up without them, that's what haunts them. Not your words, not your absence, your growth. What most people don't realize is that silence isn't passive. It's active. It's a conscious decision not to engage in anything that diminishes your worth. You didn't just disappear. You evolved. You reclaimed your emotional real estate. And that alone is a massive shift in power. Because when you stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And when you're unpredictable, you become unforgettable. Not because you played games, but because you refuse to be a pawn in one. If you've gone no contact, understand this. You've already made a bold, powerful choice. You've interrupted the pattern. You've given yourself space to breathe, to reflect, to realign. You've already done what most people are too afraid to do. You've stopped chasing validation and started honoring yourself. That's not a small win. That's a foundational change. And now, with that silence holding the space, you're ready to take the next step, not to get them back, but to keep moving forward like the force you are. He doesn't miss you just because you're gone. He misses the impact you had. And that's the part most people don't understand. It's not about physical presence. It's about emotional energy. The way you made him feel seen. The way you held space for his chaos without asking for anything in return. The way your voice calmed storms he never even admitted to anyone else. That's what lingers. That's what sticks. Because people don't truly remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And if you showed up with love, empathy, and consistency, your absence is going to hit differently. You didn't just walk away, you removed a mirror that reflected back the best in him, even when he couldn't see it for himself. And now he's standing in front of silence, and silence doesn't lie. Silence reflects the void, the gap between who he was when he had access to you and who he is now that he doesn't. That realization doesn't come immediately. At first, it's denial. He convinces himself he's fine, that he's better off, that you were too emotional or too much. But time has a funny way of peeling off those layers of ego. Time exposes truth. And over time, that memory of you doesn't just fade, it sharpens. Because here's the thing, when someone has consistent access to your love, your energy, your kindness, they don't always value it. It becomes normal, routine, expected. But when it's gone, that's when they notice all the small, quiet things you used to do. The check-ins, the encouragement, the patience, the safety. And that realization, it haunts them. Not because you were perfect, but because you were present. In a world where most people are half in, half out, your consistency was a rare gift. And losing that kind of presence, it's not something people get over easily. So no, he doesn't just miss the fact that you're not texting anymore. He misses the version of himself that felt grounded when you were around. He misses the emotional weight you carried for both of you. He misses the confidence you breathed into his lungs when life felt too heavy. And deep down, he knows he may never find that again. Not because most people don't give it the way you did. Most people don't show up like you showed up, fully, authentically, sacrificially. And it's that depth that haunts him, not the silence itself, but the loss of what was behind that silence. We're not wired to miss people who blend in. We miss people who leave an imprint, people who change the atmosphere when they walk into a room, people whose presence makes you feel like you've come home. You were that. Whether he admitted it or not, he felt it. And now that you're gone, he's feeling something else entirely. Lack, emptiness, the echo of what used to be. That's what haunts him. And it's not just about what he lost. It's about who he became without you. You were the light in a space he never learned how to brighten on his own. And now he's sitting in that darkness, realizing the glow wasn't coming from him. It was coming from you. That kind of realization doesn't fade with time, it deepens. Especially when he watches you rise, rebuild, and reclaim your life without ever looking back. That's when it clicks. It wasn't about attention. It was about impact. You didn't just walk through his life, you shifted it. And that kind of presence, it doesn't just disappear. It stays, it echoes, it haunts. Your comeback isn't about revenge. It's about radiating what he lost. That's the real shift. Because if your focus after heartbreak is to prove something to him, you're still giving him your power, and that's not healing, that's performance. The truth is, the most powerful move you can make isn't to show him what he missed, but to become so grounded, so lit up from the inside that you stop missing what you had with him. That's the glow up. It's not a look. It's not just about changing your hair or hitting the gym. It's about changing your energy, your mindset, your self-talk. It's about finally realizing that what made you valuable wasn't how you loved him. It's how you love yourself after being broken by someone you loved. When you stop looking at the breakup like something you have to recover from and start seeing it as the thing that exposed what you were settling for, everything shifts. That's when you start radiating in a way that's not about him anymore. That energy, real, healed, self-anchored energy, is magnetic. And whether he admits it or not, he feels it. People can sense when you're no longer carrying them in your spirit. They can sense when your joy isn't tied to their presence anymore. That's what shakes them. Not a new partner, not a perfect Instagram photo. It's the deep, quiet confidence that says, I'm good, really good, with or without you. You don't need revenge, because real healing doesn't need an audience. Real growth isn't loud. It doesn't need to be flaunted. But what it does do is radiate. It walks into a room before you do. It shows up in the way you speak to yourself, the way you hold your boundaries, the way you stop over-explaining, over-giving, and overthinking. That shift, it changes everything. You're no longer operating from a place of lack. You're moving from a place of abundance. And that's what he didn't expect. He thought you'd always be there, orbiting around his emotional availability, waiting for the bare minimum. He didn't think you'd get up and evolve. And maybe for a while, you didn't think you would either. Maybe you stayed too long. Maybe you lost yourself in the process. But guess what? That was the lesson. That was the wake-up call. And now that you've answered it, you're not the same. You're not waiting for him to circle back. You're not hoping he realizes what he had, because you've realized what you have. You, your time, your purpose, your peace. And when you fully tap into that, it creates a ripple effect. People notice when your energy upgrades. They don't know what changed, but they feel it. He feels it. He'll scroll past your page, and it won't be the photos that haunt him. It'll be the peace in your eyes, the confidence in your posture, the silence that says you no longer need closure because you closed it yourself. That's power. And power doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It doesn't plot revenge. Power radiates. And that energy, that unbothered, unshakable energy, that's what makes him sit in his own silence. That's what makes him reflect. Not because you're trying to make him regret it, but because regret is the natural consequence of losing someone who found peace in your presence and then found greater peace without you. That's the real comeback, not the one where you show him, but the one where you become so whole, so aligned, so full of purpose that you don't even recognize the version of you that used to wait for breadcrumbs. And he doesn't recognize you either, because the person you're becoming, she's not haunted. She's radiant. She's focused. And that light, that's what he lost. The mind remembers energy more than words. You can say all the right things, write the perfect goodbye message, pour your heart out with eloquence, but what truly sticks with someone is the energy you carried, the tone, the presence, the feeling they got when they were around you. That emotional fingerprint lingers long after the messages are deleted and the conversations have stopped. It's not about what you said. It's about how you made them feel when you said it. And when you go no contact, what they're left with is not just silence. It's the energy of that last interaction, the shift in your emotional posture, the vibe that something inside of you finally changed. When someone's been used to your warmth, your empathy, your constant availability, and suddenly that energy is gone, it doesn't go unnoticed. It's like walking into a room that used to smell like your favorite candle, and now there's nothing, just air, stillness. That difference in emotional temperature hits hard because your energy was a constant. Even when you were explaining yourself again and again, you gave presence, you gave softness, and now that energy is no longer there to buffer their discomfort or fill the silence. That's what haunts them. The absence of your presence is louder than any paragraph you could have ever written. People will often forget what you did. They may even forget what you said, but they will always remember the way you made them feel. And if you gave freely, if you were their emotional safe space, the person who saw past their walls, the one who didn't make them feel judged, even when they didn't have it together, then your energy is imprinted on their memory, whether they acknowledge it or not. When that kind of energy disappears, it creates space for reflection. And sometimes that reflection doesn't come with peace. It comes with discomfort. Because now they have to face the void. They have to sit in the space where your energy used to reside. The silence you leave behind is not empty. It carries a message. It carries the final echo of who you were when you gave them your best, and the turning point when you decided to reclaim that energy for yourself. That shift, that's what hits. Because it's not just about cutting contact. It's about the feeling they get when they realize you're no longer emotionally accessible. That energy used to anchor them, even when they pulled away, even when they didn't show up right. They always knew you'd still be there, energetically tied to their mess, holding it down. And now that tie is cut, not in bitterness, but in strength. And this is where the regret builds, not from losing your words, but from losing your light, your energy, your patience, your belief in who they could become. That's not something people can easily replace. It's not just another body or another text thread. It's a vibe, a safe space. And that's what they miss. They miss the way their nervous system calmed down when you walked into the room. They miss the way your presence gave them a sense of direction, even when they were lost. And now they're trying to recreate that feeling with people who don't carry what you did. And they can't. Because energy can't be faked. It can't be manufactured. That's why your silence speaks louder than your goodbye, because energy doesn't lie. When you shift your energy, when you stop chasing, stop overgiving, stop breaking yourself down to build someone else up, that shift is palpable. It's what causes them to replay moments in their mind and wonder when it all changed. When you stopped texting back, when your tone lost its softness, when you smiled less. It wasn't one sentence or one moment. It was the energy, the slow, quiet withdrawal of something they took for granted. And that's what they'll remember. That's what will echo long after the silence sets in. Growth in silence is louder than any closure you thought you needed. When you step into no contact, a lot of people expect some dramatic realization, a moment where the other person comes running back with tears and apologies. But that's not real healing. That's fantasy. The truth is, the real transformation happens quietly, in the moments when you decide not to reach out, when you feel the urge to explain yourself one last time and choose not to. When you finally realize that their validation was never the prize, your peace was. That's when the real shift begins. Because healing doesn't need applause. It needs commitment. And most of that happens behind the scenes, in the daily decision to protect your energy instead of wasting it on someone who couldn't meet you where you stood. There's a certain power in choosing silence, not as a punishment, but as a form of personal revolution. You stop needing them to understand your pain. You stop craving their acknowledgement. And you begin to understand that growth isn't about convincing someone you've changed. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need their approval anymore. That doesn't come with a round of applause. It comes with hard nights. It comes with tears. It comes with uncomfortable questions and deep self-confrontation. But it also comes with a peace that starts to build quietly in the background, a stillness that wasn't there before. That's how you know you're healing, not because they call, but because it doesn't matter if they do. The person you were when you were reaching out, begging for clarity, hoping for one more conversation, that version of you was holding on to a version of them that didn't exist anymore, or maybe never did. That version of you needed closure like oxygen. But now, you're learning how to breathe on your own again. You're building a life that's not defined by their presence or their absence. That's the kind of growth that doesn't scream, it radiates. It shows up in the way you no longer flinch when their name pops up, in the way you can walk into familiar places and not feel that same ache, in the way you stop rewriting history in your mind just to make the pain make sense. People don't always notice growth while it's happening, but they feel it later, especially the person who underestimated you. They feel it when you no longer engage in the drama, when your tone shifts from reaction to neutrality, when your glow returns, not because you want to be seen, but because you finally started seeing yourself. That's haunting to someone who used to feed off your attention, your availability, your softness. You're no longer on standby for their emotional confusion. You've moved on, quietly, consistently, and that energy shift is loud. Even if you don't say a word, They might never admit it, but they feel the distance now. Not just physical distance, but emotional separation. That space you created, it forced them to sit with themselves, to realize that maybe, just maybe, the chaos didn't come from you. It came from what they weren't willing to face. And without you there to buffer that with your love, your patience, your presence, they're left with nothing but their own reflection. That's what growth does. It puts the responsibility back where it belongs, not in your hands, but in theirs. And while they're sitting in the silence, wondering how they lost someone so real, you're busy rebuilding your voice, rebuilding your confidence, rebuilding your sense of identity outside of their narrative. That's what growth looks like, not an announcement, not a performance, just quiet progress, quiet power. And eventually that silence becomes the loudest thing they've ever heard. Not because you needed to prove a point, but because you became the point. The real power of no contact lies in what it does to you, not to him. It forces you to break free from a pattern that may have kept you stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and emotional depletion. For too long, you might have allowed your worth to be defined by someone else's treatment of you. You might have found yourself constantly adjusting, shrinking, compromising your values just to keep the peace or hold on to a relationship that didn't see you for all that you are. But the beauty of no contact is that it interrupts that cycle. It forces you to confront the question, who am I when I'm not in this relationship? Who am I when I'm not seeking someone else's validation? The answer to that question becomes your transformation. When you step back and stop engaging, stop explaining, stop investing energy in someone who hasn't shown they can meet you where you are, you create the space to rediscover your own strength. You remember what it feels like to stand on your own 2 feet. You remember what it feels like to make decisions for yourself without wondering what they'll think. You reclaim the parts of yourself that were dormant under the weight of someone else's expectation. And this isn't about trying to get back at them. This is about you reconnecting with your own potential, your own desires, and your own purpose. This period of silence is the fertile ground for you to plant seeds of self-love, self-empowerment, and self-respect. It's when you start saying no to things that drain you, when you begin setting healthy boundaries, and when you start saying yes to opportunities that bring you peace. It's about shifting from a mindset of, I need him to realize what he lost, to, I am realizing what I deserve. You stop waiting for a text, a phone call, an apology, or any external confirmation that your worth is valid. And when you do that, when you completely stop needing that validation, something magical happens. You become truly untouchable. People often think that no contact is a tactic to make the other person miss you, but the real benefit is the way it makes you miss your old self. The version of you who wasn't afraid to stand in their truth. The version of you who wasn't constantly questioning their worth. The version of you who showed up fully, unapologetically, without needing to be anything other than who you are. The more you lean into that self-discovery, the more your life fills with things and people that reflect the new, stronger version of you. You stop chasing what doesn't serve you and start attracting what aligns with your highest self. As you grow in this space, you start to see yourself as more than just someone who was once part of someone else's story. You see yourself as the author of your own life. Your dreams, your goals, your aspirations take center stage. You stop placing your happiness on someone else's timeline, and you start building a life that stands on its own 2 feet, independent of anyone's approval. And here's the beautiful part. The more you embrace your worth and hold that space for yourself, the more you become attractive, not in a superficial sense, but in a magnetic, self-assured, unapologetically authentic way. The more you stop chasing, the more people start noticing, not because you're trying, but because you've fully stepped into your own power. And the person who couldn't meet you there, they feel it. They feel the shift. They feel the distance, not just because you stopped texting or calling, but because they sense the transformation that's happening within you. You're no longer looking for their approval. You've stopped allowing their absence to define your emotional state. Instead, you're allowing your own presence, your own growth, your own sense of purpose to define you. That's the ultimate form of attraction, being so aligned with who you are that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're simply living in your truth, and that truth is magnetic. No contact doesn't just make them realize they lost something valuable. It makes you realize you were valuable all along. And once you fully understand that, you become unstoppable. You no longer wait for anyone to validate your worth because you are fully grounded in your own self-respect. And when you stand in that power, you attract everything that matches it. People, opportunities, and experiences that reflect the best of who you are. That's the ultimate comeback, not when they miss you, but when you finally start missing the version of you who had the strength to walk away, to choose yourself, and to stand in the full glory of who you were always meant to be. As we close today, let us remember that no contact isn't just a strategy to make someone miss you. It's an act of self-love and empowerment. It's a choice to reclaim your energy, your peace, and your worth. It's about rediscovering who you are when you're no longer defined by someone else's presence or absence. It's the quiet, transformative power of choosing yourself over and over again, even when it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. In the silence, you find strength. In the space you create, you find growth. And when you stand in your full power, you become untouchable, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you're living in the truth of who you are. The true magic happens when you stop seeking validation from others and start validating yourself. When you realize that your worth was never dependent on anyone but you, the world around you shifts. You attract what you deserve, not based on your performance, but on your alignment with your highest self. And in that place of peace, you will not only heal, but thrive. Remember, the best revenge is not in the reaction you get from someone else, but in the way you choose to live your life moving forward. You don't need them to validate your worth. You are enough. You always were. And as you continue this journey, may you walk in the power of your own transformation, knowing that your peace and your purpose are worth more than anything you left behind. Thank you.